I was one of the first media types last year to suggest that Iowa could win 10 or 11 games. They won 10. They made it to the Big Ten championship game. A lot of you scoffed at me when I suggested it. How about 2024 for the Iowa Hawkeyes? Just as good? Maybe not quite as good. Let's start with their spring game. That's coming up in a bit. Lockdown Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. So we're going to talk about the Hawkeyes spring game coming up. Caitlin Clark's future, a lot of Iowa, plus an evacuation in Bloomington last night, and we'll have our power rankings, see where your team ranks. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. I will argue that the 2023 Iowa Hawkeyes were the most interesting team in the Big Ten. Craig, what are you talking about? Are you kidding me? Really? While Michigan was beating everybody by 35 points, the Hawkeyes needed a month to score 35 points, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Even Vegas didn't know what to do with the Hawkeyes games last year. Each week, they kept setting new record lows for predicted point totals, and the game still finished on the unders. I will say this, and I say this with all due respect, but Iowa was kind of like the car wreck on the side of the road that you just couldn't take your eyes off of. I know I never missed a game. Did you guys? And yet they continued to win football games, and they kept winning. And despite injury after injury, that steady defense, and of course the best punter in the country and maybe the history of the world, kept flipping the field position to the Hawkeyes' advantage, and they were able to win games. And all of this was going on with the backdrop of Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator, coaching for his job and that soap opera, all while working for his dad, the head coach. Plus, add into the mix a new athletic director who was watching every move. It was must-see TV. It was wonderful. It was a great story. It was a great season for the Hawkeyes. Now, a lot of people complained about the lack of offense. Iowa's defense and special teams helped them pile up the wins. There's no question. But then, while everyone's complaining about that, it started to take on a life of its own. The low-scoring wins kind of became a badge of honor for the Iowa Hawkeyes and Hawkeyes fans. I mean, which game was your favorite? Was it the 10-7 win against Northwestern? Was it the 15-6 win at Wisconsin? How about the 15-13 win over Illinois? They were all good. You know why? Because a win is a win. Now, looking forward to spring football and the spring football game, which is at Kinnick Stadium on April 20th. We've got some big changes to look at here for Iowa. As tight end Eric All and corner and special teams guru, and I think my favorite player, Cooper DeJean, they're going on to the next level. They're going to be early draft picks in the NFL draft. Those are big shoes to fill, no question about it. But there is some familiarity as well. Of course, Cade McNamara comes back as quarterback. He's returning from a season-ending knee injury. He will reassume his role as the starting quarterback, but not for a while. Remember, his story, he came from Michigan. He was doing okay there. They got him to the playoffs, but he lost his job to J.J. McCarthy, decided to come to Iowa, but he never got off the ground last year. Had surgery before taking a snap at practice, and was very limited in the spring. He suffered a quad injury early in summer camp, did not get a lot of reps before the season started, and he never really looked comfortable in the games that he did play in. And then eventually he tore his ACL against Michigan State. Now, that injury took place on September 30th. That is 6 months from spring ball. So that's not good. because he's not going to be ready to go here in the spring. So that's 2 spring football periods in a row where he was limited last year, won't be able to go this year, missing out on a lot of time and a lot of reps. The team will also have Luke Lachey coming back at tight end. He's great, but he had a devastating lower leg ankle injury, had surgery on that. He's coming back from that. The biggest acquisition for the Iowa Hawkeyes is literally the biggest acquisition. Caden Proctor transferring in from Alabama at left tackle, 6'7", 360 pounds. Nobody's moving that. Played every game as a freshman at Alabama, 14 games he started, was all SEC freshman team member, and now he gets to come home. He's from Des Moines, Iowa, so he transfers to Iowa for this. This is big. This is a big get and a win-win for both sides. And so some of these pieces in place and still some to come. Let's not forget the offense is going to have a new coordinator in Tim Lester. Certainly, you're not going to forget that. An offensive coordinator has been like the main story for the Iowa Hawkeyes for a couple of years now. So you talk about a guy that's going to be coming in under the microscope. I'm guessing that there's not going to be much of a honeymoon period for Lester, and he's going to have to show the fans something very early and very often. But Kirk Ferentz is steady as he goes and been here 25, now going on 26 years as the head coach for the Hawkeyes. He says Lester is similar to him in a lot of ways, but he says that he'll bring a new perspective. What does that mean? We don't know. Lester says that the Hawkeyes will be disciplined and they will be aggressive. Now, to me, aggressive means taking shots downfield, big passing plays, establish a running game, don't turn the ball over. I don't think that is Lester and Ferentz's definition. I don't think we're on the same page there. When Lester was a head coach at Western Michigan, I mean, we can only go by what we know and what we saw him in the past. He was at Western Michigan for a while. And 4 of his years there, he had his offense ranked in the top 35 nationally. He was a quarterback coach at Purdue for 1 year in 2016. His quarterback there was David Blau, who was okay for a Big Ten quarterback. He's been a perennial backup in the NFL. Had 2 years as an offensive coordinator at Syracuse and another year as quarterback coach there. His 2 years of offensive coordinating at Syracuse yielded the 13th ranked offense out of 14 ACC teams. So we'll see. I don't know if that's something we want to really look at this point. Meanwhile, while McNamara misses the spring, Iowa's top 3 running backs, they return. They're led by LaShawn Williams, who had some good games last year. 2 of their top 3 receivers returned, but what does that really mean? Their receiving core was not a factor last year at all. So after the spring game, we'll kind of reassess the situation, see where we're at. And again, without McNamara in the mix again, it's going to be tough for Lester to really get a feel for his offense and the players get a feel for each other. But we start looking forward to the summer and, of course, the season that is coming up. There'll no longer be the West Division to kind of hide in. I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but you don't have Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State all in the East, and then Iowa can just try and dominate the West. That's gone now. It's a free-for-all with 17 other teams lined up. Most of them are pretty good. Top 2 make the Big Ten championship. Things start on August 31st with a game against Illinois State, and then the annual Cy-Hawk series against Iowa State. That's in week 2. The Big Ten opener is on the road at Minnesota, September 23rd. Then they get a bye week. Then it's another road game at Ohio State. So after all that, the first Big Ten home game for the Hawkeyes isn't until October 12th, believe it or not. And that's when the Washington Huskies come to town. There's a trip to the Rose Bowl mixed in to take on UCLA. Of course, the season finale against Nebraska. I'm not sure today that I can sit here and say that this will be another double-digit win total for the Iowa Hawkeyes. However, I think they definitely could go bowling and have a winning season. So that's where we're at right now. So going to spring, they'll have their 15 practices and then their spring game scrimmage, whatever Kirk Ferentz wants to call it. at Kinnick Stadium on April 20th. What do you guys think? Some of my most loyal fans are Hawkeye fans. Love to hear from you. You can hit me up on Twitter or X at TalkBig10 You see our website down there on the bottom, TalkBig10 10.com. If you want to find all of our past podcasts, they're there chronologically and also section up by team. If you just want to go look at the ones we focused on, the Hawkeyes, they're all grouped together. And you can also get some merch. So you want some Hawkeyes merchandise, shirts, pennants, hats. It's all there. TalkBig10 10.com. And of course, you can hit us up with the comments on YouTube as well. We'd always appreciate that. All right. So lots to get to here on this episode. We're just getting warmed up. A crazy scene at Indiana University on Tuesday night. We've been talking about court storming. This is the opposite of that. We'll explain that all in detail coming up in just a bit. Plus, how about Caitlin Clark's future? Nobody's really talking about it, but maybe will she stay at Iowa another year instead of going to the WNBA? We'll make a case there. And somebody really loves the new offensive coordinator at UCLA. We got all that on tap, plus our power rankings. It's all right here on Locked On Big Ten. Hey, if you want to go to any of these games in the Big Ten, sporting events, non-sporting events, if you need tickets, you need Game Time. Game Time can help you out there. They, if you're the guy that's got to get the tickets for the group, you don't have to worry about it. It's a piece of cake with Game Time. Fast and easy way to get tickets. All the sports games, also non-sports games like music, comedy shows, theater, Game Time. They got it all. Got killer last-minute deals that you can get there. You get the views from your seat on your phone. You can take a picture of what you're going to see from that seat before you buy. It's very easy. Couple of clicks on your phone, and boom, it's all good. And it's an all-in price, too. Nothing that like mysteriously gets added on later. It's all right there. You see what the cost is going to be. All right. So they got Game Time's got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event or even like an hour after it starts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED ON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate that. And you everydayers out there, be sure to subscribe if you haven't. We always ask you to subscribe. It helps us out, helps you out. It's free. No other information required. You just click it on and you're good to go. Subscribe on YouTube, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten wherever you get the podcast, your team every day. And again, don't forget to check out our website, TalkBig10 10.com. So bizarre scene Tuesday night in Bloomington at Assembly Hall. They had to evacuate everybody in the middle of the game in the second half. In fact, Wisconsin had just stormed back from being 13 down. They tied the game at 54, 10:06 to go in the second half. And all of a sudden, alarms start going off. The guys on TV didn't know what was going on. They thought it was some commotion. They noticed everybody was just heading for the exits. A little early for that, even though the Hoosiers had just blown a lead. And that turned out to be a fire alarm. Somebody in the balcony pulled the fire alarm. You can debate whether that helped Indiana or not, whether it took away some of the home court luster when everybody came back. Not everybody came back, for one. Or, stop the bleeding for Wisconsin. And the Hoosiers were able to hang on and win this game 74-70 in a much-needed win. Both these teams really needed it, but Indiana got it. Khalil Ware, who's working his way up the future NBA draft, played his best game of the season, 27 points and 11 rebounds. He was dominating throughout the entire game. Trey Galloway had 12 assists in the game. I think he only had 2 turnovers, and he missed the last 2 practices. He's had a bad foot. There was a question as to whether he was going to play. They don't win without him. It was incredible, but Khalil Ware really standing out as an athlete, and he's gonna be a pick in the NBA draft, that's for sure. Speaking of pro basketball, as you know, Iowa basketball player Caitlin Clark, we talk about her a lot. She recently broke the NCAA women's all-time scoring mark. There's been some debate as to whether she's the greatest of all time, right? Either sport, whatever, or women's. We've discussed that here. Broadcaster Jay Williams, who's a former player, now a broadcaster, he says she's not even in the conversation because she hasn't won a championship yet. See what happens this year. We've discussed this topic here on Lockdown Big Ten. Again, go back to our archives and check it out. Go to the Iowa section if you want to look. We've talked a lot about Caitlin Clark. Well, Dick Vitale came to her defense. And he said, while I respect other people's opinions, meaning Jay Williams, who's very polite about it, he said that he thinks it's unfair to eliminate someone from a conversation about the greatest ever because they don't have a championship. He said, look, championships are won by strong teams. Emphasis on teams. He used Wilt Chamberlain as an example because he didn't win enough championships because the Celtics were so dominating and were a loaded team back in the day in his era. So that's his point. By the way, as long as we're talking about Caitlin Clark, she still mums the word on whether she is going to use her COVID eligible year and come back for another year at Iowa or jump to the WNBA. I think a lot of people think she's going to jump. She most likely would end up in the Midwest with the Indiana Fever of the WNBA in the draft. Now, name, image, and likeness, nil, could make this an interesting decision for Clark. She reportedly has made just under $1 million of nil money this year at Iowa. She could certainly get more next year. These are national deals that she's got. Maybe they would carry over to the WNBA. But by comparison, the WNBA salaries, they average around $150K, $150,000 a player. Again, Caitlin's making $900,000 at Iowa, according to reports. Erica Wheeler of the Indiana Fever is the highest paid player in the league at $242,000. By comparison, the NBA's highest paid player is Steph Curry of the Warriors. He makes $52 million a year. Big difference. So maybe she'll stay there at Iowa for another year and make some more advertising money. Congrats to Purdue big man Zach Edey. He has won his record 11th Big Ten Player of the Week award in his career, his 6th of the season. He averaged 30 points and 80.8% shooting from the field as Purdue scratched off 2 more wins last week over Rutgers and Michigan. He also had 15 rebounds against the Wolverines. And while we're talking about Caitlin Clark going pro and whether or not she does, Zach Edey, he didn't go pro last year, and he could have. I guess a lot of people talked him out of it. Despite his 7'4" frame, big men are a dying breed in the NBA. You don't have the big post guys anymore. You got to be able to run. You got to be able to shoot. And Edey has just made 1 career 3-pointer at Purdue. Now, word is he might be a lottery pick this year because what's the difference, you might ask? Well, his numbers are about the same, but he's moving so well with and without the ball. He's really worked on that. He's in incredible shape. And now people in the NBA are taking notice. By the way, despite 4 years at Purdue, he also has his COVID eligibility season left. That's right, Big Ten teams. He could come back. Matt Painter says he's not going to put any pressure on him for any kind of decisions. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion. He's going to go to the NBA, but maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway, don't worry, Boiler fans. If he does go, Matt Painter has another 7'2" recruit that can shoot. It's going to be playing next year. So relax over there in West Lafayette. Staying in the state of Indiana, I know we were talking about the Hoosiers earlier. The Hoosiers, Mackenzie Mbako was the freshman of the week in the Big Ten this week. I'll give him a shout out. He scored a game high, 22 points and holding 7 rebounds in a loss to Nebraska last week. But he got off to a really slow start. He was recruited with a lot of hype. Kind of took his time to figure things out, particularly defensively. Got lost a lot on the court, playing a lot better now. And this is his second time winning this honor in the Big Ten. So wanted to share that as well. And one football note here. UCLA football. They raised a lot of eyebrows the past couple of days. They announced that a longtime NFL coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, is coming to Westwood to be the Bruins offensive coordinator. UCLA quarterback Ethan Garbers seems to be excited about the move. He tweeted out, "It's time for us to have some fun." And who wouldn't, right? You're a young kid, young quarterback out there in LA, and now you're going to work with the guy that used to work with Patrick Mahomes. I think it's pretty exciting. So I think he's excited about that as well. Here we are in the middle of the week. Before we have our rundown of our power rankings of men's basketball in the Big Ten, Wednesday night games tonight around the conference. Northwestern is at Maryland. This is part of a two-game doubleheader on Big Ten Network. That's the 7 p.m. Eastern game. Again, Northwestern at Maryland. And then Minnesota at number 13, Illinois. That's the nightcap at 9 p.m. Women's basketball on Wednesday night. Michigan is at number 2, Ohio State. That's a 7 p.m. Eastern game on Peacock. Penn State is at Purdue to take on the Lady Boilermakers, also at 7 o'clock. And speaking of Caitlin Clark, the number 6 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes at Minnesota. The Caitlin Clark show starts at 9 p.m. on Peacock. So a men's, women's doubleheader on Peacock tonight. You can check that out. That's how far women's basketball. They got the prime time, the late game, women's game. That's what Caitlin Clark means. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Our show is on there as well. Always check that out. But you can go to Locked On Sports Today and subscribe there as well. All right, we got our power rankings. We'll see where your team ranks as we do this every Wednesday right here. Our men's basketball Big Ten power rankings on Locked On Big Ten. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's number 1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players, your teams. They have quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, all this stuff that they have going on there. And I always tell you, games like anything involving the Pacers, take the over. I like games involving the Cavaliers. They've been hot lately. I've been taking them as well. So stay away from the Heat. Again, still shaking out a few suspensions from last Friday. Those are just a couple of tips I can give you for a couple of days here. FanDuel.com. Just visit it right now. FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right. I want to put it on the screen here. Our power rankings for the men's and Big Ten men's rankings here. I'm just going to put them all up here. And we're going to run down them here. Give you my explanation. If you're listening on audio only, we'll explain it as best we can with the audio. So, I mean, obviously, you got the Purdue Boilermakers at number 1. They are clearly head and shoulders over everybody else. They did have the loss to Ohio State. Then they came back and blew out Rutgers, and then they beat Michigan. Look, this has got to be creeping in the back of minds of Purdue. Another excellent season, but the knock on that, what are they going to do in March? Fairleigh Dickinson last year. Purdue's had teams that have been ranked number 1, number 2 for several years, and then they just don't get a big push in March. And that's got to be starting to creep in to players and Matt Painter's head at this point right now regarding the Boilermakers. But so far, so good. Number 1, head and shoulders above everybody else. Got the Illinois Fighting Illini at number 2. They still have one more game against Purdue if they want to have any hope of stealing the regular season. It's a slim chance, but you know what? They might be somebody to look at in the Big Ten tournament. I will tell you this, they will be dangerous. They've scored 80 plus points in their last 6 games. So I don't know if they have enough real estate to realistically catch up to Purdue in the regular season. Maybe they will. And certainly if they beat them head to head, but look out for them in the Big Ten tournament. I've got Nebraska all the way up to number 3. What do you think about that? They won 4 in a row, and they finally won on the road at Bloomington. Remember, they had all their in the Big Ten season. They were undefeated at home and couldn't win on the road. Well, they've learned how to win. They took their home game on the road to Bloomington last week, and they still have Ohio State, Rutgers, and Michigan on the schedule. Those are winnable games. So I've got Nebraska at number 3 and Northwestern at number 4. These are all double bye teams if you get the first 4 spots in the conference. And they had those tough overtime losses back to back. Then they won like 4 out of 5. And then tonight they've got Maryland. So they can keep it rolling. I figure, look, if you're losing in overtime, you're right there. You're winning. You're playing well. You just happen to lose those games. And then they bounce back off that to win 4 out of 5. They're playing good basketball. So I got Michigan State now, maybe a little high at 5. They all of a sudden, just when we were propping them up, saying how good they look, they haven't been playing very well lately. Got a couple of losses now, Iowa and Ohio State going in the wrong direction all of a sudden at the wrong time. They were going in the right direction at the right time. Now they're not. All right, number 6, I got the Wisconsin Badgers. They've dropped 5 straight now after losing at Indiana on Tuesday night. You know what? They lost 4 straight. That's right. They lost 4 straight. Then they won 2 out of 3. And then they lost Tuesday night to Indiana. That's what they did. So, they've been up and down all over the place. I got Minnesota, the Golden Gophers at number 7. They need some resume wins now. And they are at Illinois tonight. That would help. That would help a lot. At number 8, the Iowa Hawkeyes. They've scored like 85 points a game the last 3 games. They do score. They got no defense whatsoever. So later on, going into the weekend, they've got Northwestern and Illinois. They had Penn State last night. Look, Maryland at number 9. They need some wins and some tournament wins to have any hope. And by that, I mean Big Ten tournament wins in order to get into the NCAA tournament. Probably not going to make it. Penn State at number 10, rounding out my top 10. And they shocked Illinois last week. That was a good win. And they beat the Hoosiers by 9, right? After, I think they came back on them. So that's my top 10. Let's take a look at the best of the rest real quick. Ohio State Buckeyes, I got them at number 11. Jake Diebler. Put a little life in the Buckeyes, I have to admit, but I think it's a little too late regarding any tournament play. I've got Rutgers at number 12. They won 4 straight, then they lost 3 straight. So they're kind of flaming out here. Indiana, which has struggled shooting the threes and the free throws. Again, they were able to get the win against the Badgers last night. And Michigan rounding out the bottom. And they have lost. One time they lost 5 in a row and then 10 of 11. And it's not good. Got at Rutgers and at Ohio State still on the schedule. So those are my power rankings for the Big Ten as we start to wind down the regular season here. It's getting to be crunch time. Big Ten tournament right around the corner. NCAA tournament right around the corner. All that good stuff coming up. Many ways for you to reach me any time of day, anytime, any day of the week, whether we're on basically every day. But you can find me at Twitter, at X, at Talk Big Ten, number 10. Of course, here on YouTube. And don't forget our website, Talk Big Ten. You see the crawl on the bottom, talkbig10 number 10.com. Be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now. It helps us out. You follow us on your favorite podcast app. And you get the latest episode of Lockdown Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And don't forget our friends at Lockdown Sports Today. Check them out and subscribe as well. That'll do it. More spring previews for Big Ten teams and football teams. And, of course, the basketball all over the place for men's and women. We got it all right here on Lockdown Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thanks for checking us out.